Okay, tone of voice. This is going to take less time. I think a lot of this is going to be intuitive. You how do you want to sound on the phone? What are you communicating along with your words? How do you sound? Do you sound friendly? I think you should sound friendly, but we might call it business friendly. Um, just real quick, the idea of tone, not a voice, but just tone itself in language, can also be referring to writing and all that. You create a tone also with the words you choose, the structures you use, and that also applies to when you're speaking. So, word choice could be part of it. We'll talk about some of that later in the expressions. Um, the classical sort of dichotomy, if you like that word, or separation is between like formal and informal. If you do these Cambridge exams and stuff, for years you've been probably thinking about that. And that's really an oversimplification. Um, there are lots of registers. Registers are a very fluid concept. Also, they're changing a lot with different trends that are going on in the world, with types of communication and globalization and texting and emojis, and there's a lot of things going on. So, what are we aiming towards in all that complexity? Well, I think just be yourself, be friendly, but businessy friendly. Not street, in the park with your friends kind of friendly. So that's the tone we're aiming for. And just two things to keep in mind is that certain tonal qualities sometimes get imported, naturally get imported from other languages that people speak, and then they learn English. So they bring that sort of idea about tone from one language to the other, but these ideas are not always, universal or so applicable. So, two things I want to mention is, try not to use a loud monotone. And that's something I see from some of my students because Spanish, as it's spoken in central Spain, tends to be relatively a loud monotone. And I when I grew up in California, the Spanish I heard was Mexican Spanish, and it's much more, you might say, melodious, or it's got more peaks and valleys in terms of intonation. And I understand even in Spain, different regions do different things with that. Like in Galicia, it's more sing song maybe, but here, where I live in the center of Spain, it's kind of a loud monotone. Sounds almost to an untrained ear like maybe German might sound to somebody. A Mexican friend told me that I remember walking down the street one of the first when I first came to Spain and hearing some people talking, and I'm sure they were talking about nothing like the weather or how's your family doing, but because it was like loud and that like, hey, these guys gonna get into a fight or something. Should I get out of the way here? What's that? Um, so if you speak too loud, boom, 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 it might sound aggressive, and you don't want to sound aggressive. So careful with that. Uh, volume, just volume, isn't it? Turn it up, turn it down. A student of mine, Emilia, who works for the Instituto Nacional de Salud, and we're not going to translate that right. She shout out to Amelia. She made a good point. She did some postdoctoral research in England, lived there for a couple of years working, and she said that when she's from the Alicante, Murcia region, right on the border there, over by the coast. So like where her accent's coming from. But when she went there, she said she talked too loud, and people, told her like, "Hey, it's kind of rude to talk so loud." Oh, okay. You talk too loud here. You're rude. And then she said she goes back home after a couple of years, and she brought her new volume level, and she said, well, you talk more quietly here, and people don't listen to you. So it's not universal. But keep it in mind. The other thing is the monotone thing, and the problem with the monotone in English is that you could sound bored, and you don't want to sound bored. I mean, if you're doing business and somebody calls and maybe they want to rent a car or talk to you about business or something, you don't want to sound bored. Like, okay, if you don't care, I don't care. I'll do business with somebody else. So, da, 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 da. No, 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 no. A little more interest, a little more excitement. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. Now, on to the expressions, part 3.